So what is next for Carlos Uresti? He is facing years in prison, and what will happen to his state Senate seat? Here to give us some insight is St. Mary's University law professor Gerald Reamey. Professor, let me ask you first, were you surprised that the senator was found guilty on all 11 counts?
Well, when the federal district attorney, or when the federal prosecutor's office rather, indicts somebody, usually there's substantial evidence, and of course there were a number of counts. It's not terribly shocking that there was substantial evidence to support those.
Now, Uresti says he will appeal this. How long could that process go on?
That process could take years. Once an appeal goes forward, briefs have to be written, oral argument usually is made, and then the appellate court can take as long as it wants to make a decision.
Well, since this is a federal case, there are sentencing guidelines. What is the most that Carlos Uresti is facing, and what is the least in prison?
Well, because of the number of counts, if those sentences were to run consecutively, we could be talking about many decades in prison. On the other hand, the judge might very well decide to run them concurrently so that they would all run at the same time. And in that case, he might get, for example, to serve his time in 10 years.
10 years. And now he is facing trial on corruption charges also. That will come up. Will this decision affect that?
It shouldn't have any impact on it.
And right now he says he's going to retain his state Senate seat. There have been no immediate calls for resignation, but the Democratic Party in the state says there are discussions underway. If he resigns, what is the process for replacing him?
Well, if he resigns, then I'm sure that those discussions that, as you say, are underway, and I'm sure they have been underway just to meet this eventuality, no doubt those discussions have centered around the replacement process and who would be a likely candidate for that. I am not an expert on that aspect of our government law, but I would imagine that that would be an appointment that would be made. It could be, however, that in the course of waiting for this appeal to run its course, that we actually hit an election cycle, in which case he might have to decide whether to stand for re-election or instead not. But you would expect that there would be plenty of opposition in the event that there's an election.
Well, he was just elected in 2016, so he won't come up for election again until 2022.
Yes, and you would expect that the appeal would be resolved well before that. So I think this is a problem that's going to have to be resolved shortly, relatively shortly. Certainly, I could imagine him staying in office until his appeal is decided. That's a possibility.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Reamey, for joining us.